guys? Welcome to our, episode of Girl Talk. I have the wonderful Nita here with us, and she is having actually her first episode here with us. So if you can just give us, a little brief overview of who you are, and, just tell everyone how wonderful you are.
Okay, thanks. I'm a global HR professional and a former lawyer. Don't hold that against me. And
Literally.
And thank you for inviting me today. I have been doing some things recently that have got me thinking about a lot of issues that I think are important for women to talk about. Mm-hmm. So yeah.
This is perfect. This is perfect. Awesome. So I think my number one question for you would definitely have to be, what is your whole outlook and perspective of, women in leadership?
Okay, so women in leadership, that's interesting. Right now, my view of women in leadership, I think, is very different than, say, it was when I started out in my career. And recently, I've been doing this program at Rotman School of Management for women like me who, I didn't say this earlier, but I've actually been on what they call a career break for a little bit of time. And focused on, as many women are, family and holding the fort and parents and all of that. And so now I'm going back into, full-time corporate work again. And this program I found is for women who are in that situation where they call it a relaunch program, right? So when you talk about women in leadership, I think what comes to mind for me right now is just how women go through different stages in their career, and they see themselves differently and maybe not even see themselves as leaders when they're younger, or even midway through their career. But then something changes when you get to where I am, which is a little older and
awkward. Anyways,
a little wiser, I like to think. But what I think is interesting is, so this relaunch program, and with women who are all in that same situation, right? And so we shared perspectives, and I observed them, and we're just observing the whole dynamic. But the leadership thing keeps coming up, where, funny enough, I think a lot of us didn't see ourselves as leaders, as I said before, and now we're in an interesting position where we're questioning, like, are we ready to be leaders? We're still thinking, like, maybe because we're doubting ourselves, like maybe we were never cut out to be leaders in the corporate world. But then ironically, we've been leaders in our private world forever. And so the program's got us thinking about all the things that we've learned in terms of leadership, in terms of in our private lives while we're on our career break, and how now we're actually bringing that into the workforce, and that we don't even necessarily as women think about that, right? We are just still looking at our resume from when we were younger, and we're saying, oh yeah, that's what I did, and so I'm going to sell myself on that. And now this program, which is fabulous in that it makes you realize that you've actually got a lot more now to offer, even, and from the career break, that has changed who you are, how you look at things, how you're going to show up as a leader, and that we are leaders.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting just how the mind works when I think we're conditioned almost to think of ourselves as, no, we're not the leaders, we're the supporters. We're the ones, in the workplace too, who are, more about supporting others and putting others forward. And the men take the charge. And we see that because in the workplace, men are predominantly at the higher levels, they're in the leadership roles. So, but that's a whole other topic I can talk about.
Yeah, I can tell. No, that's really interesting, and I can really relate to that. And it's interesting that you say that it's later on in life when women really do, I guess, grasp and take hold of the power that we know we have. And it's interesting because, like, when growing up, my mom always instilled in me, like, make your place, like, take your ground. And when you come into a room, make yourself known, sort of thing.
Yeah, I don't know if that's so common. That's amazing, though.
Well, yeah, and I think it does go back to how my mom was raised, of course. She worked a lot, 10, 11 years old, working in her dad's, restaurant, bakery, like, sort of thing.
She was out there.
She was.
Age, yeah.
And she always, because when I look at it, my mom is very traditional in the sense that it was always my dad taking care of, the expenses, the money. My mom always worked with my dad, always was the supporter in that as well. But ever since a kid, my mom always instilled in me, like, never let a man make you feel little. Never met, like, she always instilled that in me. And when it's funny enough, before we even started our podcast, she asked me what was my opinion of women in leadership. And I feel like women really are, like, we're powerhouses. We have a way, an approach that maybe, men don't have. And I really do think that's undervalued.
This is a very powerful thing you're saying, and I think this is something that resounds, with me, and I think the other women in the program. There's 35 women in this program every year. Robin's been doing it for 10 years, and I think what a lot of them realize by the end of the program is that they are powerhouses, and they know it, but the rest of the world, the people we're applying for jobs to, don't necessarily know it or recognize it in the context of the workplace. So I think now that's changing, though, and it's because young women like yourself are also, I think, talking about that more so than we did. Like, I think back to, I just put my head down and went to work. I was a good little lawyer. I was, when I went to the workplace, I was about doing the job well. I never, as I said, thought about this leadership aspect and how it would impact my career if I didn't take the lead, if I didn't take the opportunities that my male counterparts were taking, right? I kind of thought, it'll happen eventually, because I knew inside I was a powerhouse, like you said. But women have to advocate and also really exhibit themselves, their leadership qualities, I think, much more than they do.
It's almost as if, like, we have to, convince ourselves, like, you know what, like, yeah, you can. And no matter how cliche that may sound, it's so fundamental to everything. And what's really interesting to me, and this is something that I spoke about Sanji before, if you think about it, this whole program at Rotman really is about accessing and teaching yourself how to think.
Yes, because they hit you at the beginning of the program with some really hard-hitting thoughts. And it was funny because I'm sitting there with a group of women thinking, wow, they're really being quite harsh with us about how much we have to offer and how we are undervaluing it, right?
Yeah.
Because women were saying things like, well, I haven't been at work for 5 years. Why are they going to hire me? I don't, I'm so afraid. How am I going to explain it? How am I going to explain what I've been doing? And the Rotman professors were just like, you don't need to. And if you're going to explain it as something that you did consciously, that has value, and recognize the value, right? And I think as women, we feel like all the things we're doing outside of the paid workforce, right, which is all unpaid, but so important to, our husbands wouldn't be where they are if we weren't doing it. Our children wouldn't be going along where they're going if we weren't doing it. And a lot of it is done, at the expense of our careers. But we don't recognize that we're not marketing, if you want to use a business term, right? What we are learning, how we're changing, and how that then can be added back into who we are in the workforce. And I mean, I don't want to keep talking, but I mean, I could tell you that for me personally, how I recognized a lot of the things that I had now, or I have now, that I didn't have before the career break, right? And so, but Rotman did help do that, where they said, look at what you've done, and put it in terms of I guess the work term is capabilities that you're bringing, into the working world.
Well, that's, if you think about it, that break that, people have, even though it's called a break, it's not a break. It's not a break. And if you think about it, you have a choice of either to progress or not to. And that's something to take note of. And that's something that still applies to, everyday sort of thing. Because as I was telling Sandra the other day, if you have that mindset, then anything that comes your way, or any industry you get into, or any sort of job you get into, you will succeed in it, because at the end of the day, skills can be learned.
Skills can be learned. This is a new concept too, though, I think, which is interesting for me now, again, as the older party of the conversation. In the past,
what do you mean? I thought we were the same age.
In the past, I think skills were a lot of, traditionally people would get their skills at school and their knowledge, get their skills in work, get their knowledge at school. Schools, some skills there, but a lot of it was work experience. You build it up in your jobs, and your resume would usually show kind of like a progression, right? Yeah. But nowadays, and someone who's in HR and sees a lot of different people coming in the door for different roles and this and that. I worked at global organizations, and so you see people from different countries and different backgrounds and schools. A lot of careers are, as you know, careers are no longer linear. Everything is like people switch horizontally, people switched into totally new things. I think, and nowadays it's even more so that where I see companies lagging is they're still hiring for roles, but really they need to be hiring for skills and experience. But as you said, skills can be learned. And I think that's the thing that now in the working world, they're realizing you're really hiring a person for the raw materials, for who they are as a person, how they work with other people. Mm-hmm. The big focus now is emotional intelligence, right? Yes. So that's about how do you know yourself and how do you work with others. Mm-hmm. Because for companies to be innovative, people have to work well and be able to share ideas. They have to be able to execute. Everything needs to be flexible. They need to be flexible. It's not easy because, people have been taught to work in rigid hierarchies. People have been taught to think, oh, I'm a lawyer or I'm a whatever, and they are not seeing themselves as flexible. So it's an interesting time, and I think for women it's a very interesting time because, as you said, if they see the core and they see that they have now more resilience, they have a more life experience that they're bringing into the workplace, and a different way of leadership than men do, maybe a more team-oriented way of approaching things. You're nodding. I think we need to talk about that a little bit.
I think so too.
Yeah. Then they can learn the skills, as you said, right? So they have the raw materials, and they need to recognize what they bring to the table that way, and they can learn the skills. God knows there's enough stuff out there to learn, and everyone needs to be learning all the time. Right?
Yeah. Well, it also goes back to that, belief in yourself, where if you do have that determination, then that's where you'll work in order to learn those skills. So it's like, for me, for example, I believe so, like literally wholeheartedly, I believe in what I do so much that I know I will get there. Like it's something that I don't even question at this point. It's like it sounds so cliche, but like what I'm really working for and what I'm gearing towards is really to offer people like the love and positivity that is lacking in this world. I want to fill in those gaps. And if I can instill that in younger minds and in younger women, so that when they reach to my point, or when they reach to your point, for example, they can do what they want to do and not feel like they can't because of other people.
So you want to build their confidence in a way, right?
Yes.
Their ability to be bold, as your mom taught you to be.
Yes.
Yeah. I think that's what they need.
Yeah.
I think that's what I needed if I look back at myself, and I think I need it now. Can you give some to me?
I'm sure you're... No, that's awesome.
But we need it always, because as women, I think your mother knew it right from the beginning, that we
always go to supporting others, to doing what we need to do, to holding others up, and that's great. But then we don't see that is leadership too, right?
You're absolutely correct.
And that we need to recognize it and get others to see that.
Yeah. There's honestly, there's strength in numbers, right? There's when you actually have that collaboration and that team building and like that you work together and that you are all on the same page. There really, at this point, there's nothing that can penetrate. There's nothing that can stop that.
Yeah. So
yeah, I do think that we're gonna have lots of conversations about diversity, but next topic I really want to talk about is kind of the limitations that women in the workforce have and the different styles, I would say, between men and women. But yeah, guys, if you have any questions about women in the workforce, leadership, comments that you guys want to make, maybe your own experiences that you've been through and how maybe you surpassed, certain situations or experiences, please comment, and we would love to talk about it. So yeah, thanks guys. We'll talk to you soon.